Welcome to the Writer Groupie Podcast. I'm Kim Smith, the writing guru, bringing you discussions, insights, and insider details on planning, producing, promoting, and profiting as a writer. This is a podcast by writers for writers. You can find out more about Writer Groupie at www.writergroupie.net. And here's the next episode of Writer Groupie. And welcome everybody to this edition of Writer Groupie. We are up to episode 63, and tonight my guest is Rich Zahradnik, and Rich is the author of the Coleridge Taylor mysteries. He has 2 books out, and there's another one coming in the fall. And the first book is called Last Words. The second book is called Drop Dead Punk. And the book coming in the fall, which we'll probably be talking about, is A Black Sail. The first 2 books in the series have won Ippy Awards. And I'm telling you, he's a journalist as well. I just think that there's nothing that we can't discuss. This guy's got an answer for everything. So let's get right to the interview. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to be able to talk to you and your book that's coming out. I went out and checked out the stuff on Amazon, and it looks like a great series. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey as an author?
Okay, well, I was a journalist. I started out as a journalist. Actually, I'll start this out at the beginning because it's a bit cautionary. When I was 14 and a half years old, I decided I wanted to be a writer. And when I was 15 and a quarter or something like that, I decided I wasn't talented enough to be a writer. No one else told me, nothing. I just decided that all on my own. And so kind of looked around and I said, journalism, you get your name on stuff, and I could do that. And so I chose journalism and left writing behind and went into journalism and was a journalist. For about, let's say, almost 20 years, I was 30, 31, and stories, that is not the kind that are factual, but the kind you make up, kept coming to me. And I said, well, maybe I didn't have it quite right when I was 14 and 3/4. Be afraid of the decisions you make then. And I started writing a manuscript that got an agent and got 8 very nice rejections and actually wasn't really that good. And my journey began then, and it's been going on ever since. I started Last Words when I was still working full-time. I quit working full-time because I'm married and we were able to, and we needed someone to be home full-time. We have a son, and I was the one who wanted to write novels, so it made sense for me to quit. Right when I was about to finish the manuscript, I didn't have an agent or anything like that yet, and it kind of, I wouldn't say,
I think our video just froze, Rich. Hang on one second. Maybe it will come back. I hope you can hear me. There it goes. Our video froze. I don't know if you heard me say that or not.
No, I didn't. Mm-mm.
Okay, yeah. Our video froze when you were telling us about staying home full time.
Okay. I'm staying home full time, and it all looks like it went smoothly when you look back, but and the way I tell it, it sounds that way. But I got the book done. I got an agent. I got a publisher. They wanted 4 books. After the first book started winning awards and getting good notices, they wanted to extend it from a 4 to a 6 book series. And just 3 months ago, they did a deal with Blackstone Audio, so 4 of my books are going to be audiobooks. So
fabulous.
That is the journey's a lot bumpier than that, and there's a lot in there that I could talk about, and we can go into about, certainly I had to learn that writing for newspapers or magazines or any other outlets I wrote for is not the same as writing a novel. Even though I had written a lot in 2 decades, that didn't put me anywhere near close to understanding what it would take to write a book-length story that would engage people. But that was the journey.
I can't even imagine how difficult it must be to transition from a journalistic voice to a fiction voice.
Yep.
Because one, you're dealing with really kind of fact-based
Yep.
retelling, and the other is completely fabricated.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Uh,
how did you manage to do that? I mean, what
uh,
was your journey like so far as that's concerned?
yeah. I mean, if you once I was really working hard at it and going to workshops, attending workshops and conferences and things like that, the one word you hear from agents and editors more than any other is voice. They are looking, they say, for new voices, and by that they're not. They don't mean um, new sectors of society or anything like that, but someone who sounds different, who grabs you. The example I always use is because the one that drove it home for me. But I mean, if you read the first page um, of J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, you hear a voice. Everything being done there, draws you into that kid, and you're right. I'll quote rather than say it myself because she said it a lot quicker. Rainbow Rowell, who's a best-selling YA writer, gave a talk at SCBWI, and she was asked that question. Actually, she was asked something close to it. What's the difference between working at a newspaper, because she was also a journalist, and writing novels? And she said, well, there's two things. One is voice. A newspaper has a voice, and you're meant to write in the voice of the newspaper, which factual is a word people would use. Everything is sourced. You don't make anything up. And you have to be very careful even with using colorful language unless you can prove the language actually and honestly describes the situation. And so, all of this time writing in the voice of the papers and magazines that I worked for, now I had to find a voice. And it's actually not, it's more than one voice because for example, I wrote these, and I think the voice gets better over the course of the books for sort of close third-person mystery where you're following really one character. I wrote a middle grade time travel book that's first person that my agent is out shopping right now, and that was finding another voice. I couldn't take the voice from one of my books, one of my current mysteries, and transfer it. So it's being able to understand and then create a voice, and voice really is the sum total of every decision you make. The kind of dialogue you use, the internal monologue, the way the narrator narrates, word choice, it's kind of everything, and that adds up to voice.
That's so true. Oh, that is so true. I've had so many authors on this show who have told me, "Oh, I just love your accent. You have such a southern voice." Well, believe me, that comes across in my writing as well. I have a very distinctive writing voice,
Yeah,
so I certainly understand what you mean. And I've written in a variety of genres myself, so I know how difficult that is to kind of I won't pigeonholes, not really the word I'm looking for, but to get that specific voice even for genre. Like a middle grade novel versus a mystery novel, they're different. There's differences. There's big differences, obviously. Between middle grade and YA, there's differences. So,
Sure.
That's just part of craft that we all really do have to pay attention to, and especially if we want to do traditional publishing, because, that it matters.
Yeah.
So
I think it matters to readers. I think the self-published authors that are successful, if you read them, you're going to find they all have some sort of voice. I mean, you and a strong one. I mean, you read Wool, and there's a voice there.
That's true.
I don't think, if you're getting rejected in the publishing world, and everyone is telling you, this you need a voice, or this isn't voicey enough, or whatever. Just self-publishing it probably isn't going to be the solution. Yeah.
Well, so you've told us that you did get an agent and you are published via that route. So give us a little more details about your publishing experience and the agent hunt, because I know a lot of people out there still want to go that way. I mean, self-publishing is not the end-all be-all for some people.
Yeah, and I would. I mean, I'll say this. I love, and you sound a little like a jerk if you say this about your own work, but I really love the time travel story. I think it's actually got a better voice than my published mysteries. And if we cannot get a publisher, that one I would consider self. I was a media entrepreneur. I owned a weekly newspaper for a while. I started websites. Self-publishing doesn't frighten me, or I don't think it's you know, less than, and I would take a book that way if it needed to go that way. But I mean, the traditional publishing route is, you know, you first got to learn to write a query, which I'm sure everybody out there who wants to be published has heard it. But I went to conferences about it. Queries are as arcane as sonnets. I mean, if you don't have the right structure, they want the little T's in the first graph and the plot summary in the second and the who you are in the third. If you don't do it exactly right, you're deleted from their iPhone before they even read your sample pages. Say it's 5 pages they want. So I learned to write queries, and I think I went through 30 agents. Not all rejections, because some don't ever respond. So I mean, I have to go back to the spreadsheet and count how many actually did not either said no to the query or got the pages and said no. I mean, I got all the way down to full manuscripts with some, and finally found my agent that way. And then it really shouldn't be a hard process to understand. Then the agent has to do almost the same exact thing,
True.
except they know people in publishing and they have relationships and connections, but they are querying with an idea letter and some sample, usually a partial. Sometimes it's a full. A lot of times it's full, I guess, if agent to publisher, but it's still the same process. And then we went through that till Camel Press, who's my publisher, said they wanted to publish Last Words, and then said, in the process of doing the agreement, they liked the idea for the next three, so they wanted to do it as a series.
That's that's a great path. I mean, that sounds so normal to me. I mean, because I went the route originally back in 2008, and I was getting requests for partials and fulls, but I ended up going with a small publisher because I had friends who were going that route, and I just thought, well, you know, I could wait and try and sell this. If I can get an agent, I can wait and try and sell this, and then it's going to be years before it sells, and then it's going to be years before it's available, and it just. I just got bit by the bug to just hurry up and get it done. And that was a mistake. And I don't mind saying that. You learn as you go. And so, because that particular series, the first three books in that series, were out for several years with a small publisher, when that publisher folded, and a lot of times that happens,
Yeah.
I just took them and indie pubbed them and have no regrets whatsoever, and have fallen in love with the characters so much now that I'm going to write, a fourth and fifth book to go with the series. So
Right. That's great.
everything, it's all good, but every individual author has their own journey and their own path. They have to pick which way they want to go with their career, and no regrets.
No, I heard an Edgar winner speaking a couple years ago, who got his backlist back from his publisher. I think there was a bankruptcy involved, and he was then making at that time more money publishing his own books than he had ever made when he was traditionally published. And I mean, my publisher isn't the biggest in the world, and you know, I kind of I think you kind of have to work your way up. I mean, some people, yeah, they do get, they sell their first book to St. Martin's. But I heard Larry Block speak a few months ago at the Crime Fiction Academy in New York, and Larry's 80 years old and has 100 plus books, and he was talking about his Ace Doubleday paperbacks, and I know what they are. Maybe some people won't, but you know,
I do.
and that's how he started. And I think a lot of us have to start writing Ace Doubleday paperbacks. It just looks different now. It's more doing them for a smaller publisher than doing cheapies for a big publisher, because the big publishers just aren't doing those.
Right. There's just no money in it for the big publishers. So,
Right.
and they're a business, you guys, whether you like that fact or not, they're in it to make money. And as we all are, I mean, even if you indie pub, you're going to want to get as much money for your work as you can get. So, yeah, I'm just thrilled to death for you that you've got a deal and that you're cooking along with this series. You do have some copies of your
Yeah.
books. Why don't you hold them up for us and let's talk
All right.
about each one of them a little bit so everybody can know.
This is Last Words. The title pretty much sums up how I came up with the idea that started this series, and I got to tell you, the idea that started this series was just one little thought. It's amazing how that can grow into a character, and then the character gets more complex, and other characters come in, and suddenly you have a world. But I had this what if in my head. What if a really good police reporter on the cop beat did something terrible journalistically and got himself demoted to obituaries, which is
Oh
where
my gosh.
where the title Last Words comes from. And for those that don't know journalism, even journalism before it got wrecked by the internet, most most places that aren't the New York Times, writing the obits was like kind of entry level work. My second newspaper job, I wrote obits for $10 a pop. And so the idea here is here's a guy who goes after police stories. He's always trying to figure out the why of why somebody was killed or something like that. And in obits, you don't do that. You deal with the dead bodies, but basically you just write the story and in essence bury the person in print. So that little what if got me going, and then I built a whole story around it and a character, and that was the beginning of the series. So that's him. And I should say, it's set in 1975. The first book starts in 1975, March of 75, when the Vietnam War was about to end. A lot of people think 73, but that's when we pulled out. 75 is when the North invaded the South and overran the South. But and the why of why I picked. Some people say, "Why did you decide to write historical mysteries?" It's like I wasn't thinking it was history. I mean,
Yeah.
I was
I
alive.
thought that too.
But my main reason was, okay, I want to write a mystery, and I don't want to do, 9-second DNA analysis, instant facial recognition, cameras everywhere. I mean, television in particular and the movies have taught people that things that aren't possible are possible. In other words, the stuff they do. I read an interview with the guy who writes Longmire, and he was doing research, and he asked a CSI type in Wyoming, how long to get a match? And he said, priority case? And the guy said, yeah. He said, about 9 months. And, people have been so trained for all, and I didn't want cell phones. I wanted phone booths. I wanted legwork, because you'll find in a lot of current novels, people have to find ways to either disable or destroy the cell phones so that they are not easily used in the plot.
True.
All right. So anyway, so I just went back in time and found a year that I liked. I think I liked the fact that Vietnam was ending in 75 when almost no one in this country cared. It didn't care about the war when we pulled out, except to get us out of there. And we were at the time I was writing involved in some wars that people didn't seem to care a lot about. So there was a parallel there, and so that's what happened. Next book is Drop Dead Punk. In this book, I wanted to deal with, when I say deal with, the historical stuff I deal with is the backdrop or the setting. The murder that Taylor, who's the main character, is pursuing is sometimes maybe intertwined with it, but not directly, because I can't rewrite history. So I've got to stick with what happened. So Drop Dead Punk, Last Words, I touched on the birth of the punk rock movement in New York City, down at CBGB and Max's Kansas City and other places in 74 and 75, really. I wanted to do more with that scene in here, and I wanted to deal with the period at the end of October through the end of the year when New York City almost went bankrupt.
Wow.
And the title is a play on a very famous Daily News headline, which is on the first page of the book: Ford to City drop dead. And it's when President Ford said he was not going to bail out New York City. And some analysts say he probably lost the election because of that headline, because it makes him sound inhumane. He never said drop dead, but Daily News doesn't work that way. And so this is a murder that occurs down in the Lower East Side. A punk rocker and a cop are both killed after a mugging. It looks like the punker was the guy who did it, but of course we move on to learn other things. And meanwhile, New York is coming perilously close to falling off a financial cliff that probably would have dragged the entire country and maybe the world down with it. October of last year was the 40th anniversary. I did not plan that. It was just accidental that we, I had the book coming out then. And the last one, which is coming out this fall, October the 1st, is called A Black Sail. And I'm obviously moving forward in time. I went from March 75 to October 75. I'm not freezing Taylor. I want to move him forward. So the next event that I was fascinated with, and there are many events one could do, is the bicentennial of the United States. And this massive event they had in New York Harbor where 16 tall ships, the largest gathering of them in the world to date, as well as 53 naval vessels, show up for a big parade, and it was massive. So that's going on while Taylor is trying to figure out why a woman was dumped in New York Harbor with bricks of heroin strapped around her waist.
Wow.
At a place at the Brooklyn docks where they did dump heroin for pickup later so they could avoid transporting it over the roads from the New Jersey docks into the city. So he's pursuing that murder. At the same time, he works for a small wire service now, his newspaper. Well, I don't want to do any spoiling, but he works for a wire service now. At the same time, he's got to cover the bicentennial, which drives him crazy because he doesn't like covering fluff. He wants to cover the murder, and that is A Black Sail.
I'm telling you, you just have a winning combination. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
And I'm just real thrilled to death that you came on the show and showed us and told us about your books. I've started a new segment on the show, and I like to find out now what my authors want to accomplish in their life, and that could be personal or business, over the next 5 years. So what is your goal for the next 5 years?
Oh, that's a great question. So, I want to be a writer, obviously, and I want it to pay, like we all do. So that means, to me, I've got this series going now. I decided that really until kind of the book business, I think almost everybody gets is about the names of authors, right? You almost always go into a bookstore looking for Stephen King always pops to mind because he sells 1 trillion books, or a Michael Connelly, right? Or a Patterson, or Gillian Flynn, and so, I realize that to do that, I've got to get books out there with my name on them that people read, that they talk about, and so, over the next 5 years, I would like to. I have 3 more of these to write, so that covers half the period, but the other half of the year, I write the series from August to January. The first half of the year, I'm writing another book. So that's how the time travel book for middle grade got written, and that's why it's out there now. I'm just now finishing a thriller set in the present day called The Causeway. Because I have, like everybody I think who's a writer, I have a bunch of ideas. I thought I'd love writing. I love writing. I don't want to go back to journalism. This is more fun. The problem with journalism is you have to do the reporting first. Books take research, but it's a different thing, the imagination and making, stories happen. So writing books, you're not supposed to say you want to do this, but I do sort of want to cross genres in that I'm obviously writing for the juvenile market. I have a thriller that I'm working on. I have some ideas in sci-fi fantasy and mysteries also. So that's kind of that would be my realm. I don't think there's anything outside that, but I want to do that and get, I don't know, two or three of those, more of those going besides the mystery, really going. Um, the other thing that I have done in the last 5 years since I quit work is, as a volunteer, I've been teaching kids how to publish newspapers, primarily how to publish online papers, but also how to do print papers. I started in my own town.
Very cool.
Yeah, in my son's school first. He's long out of there though, and helped start another one at another school, and have helped some other schools. And there's now our town paper folded. Some people started a new paper, and they said, "Would you get the kids to write for the paper?" I said, "Yeah, I can do that." So I'm now the editor who gets kids from the whole town into the town paper rather than their school paper, and I've connected with an organization in the city to go help out middle schools and high schools and that need the help. I'd like to find some way to teach that complements what I'm doing with the writing. And I haven't figured that out yet, because if I were to take 2 years to get a master's degree, which is what I would need to be certified in New York State, I wouldn't get a book written. And like I said, plan A is to get the books written. But people will always take a volunteer. And if I have to do that, I'll keep doing that, because it's, for me, it's, a lie. You would know this too. A lot of writing is, it's lonely. I really love it, but you're alone a lot. And
you are, and sometimes these extracurricular activities help refill the well. Something somebody says, or something somebody wears, or just a location, just a snippet of conversation will send you off into the writing chair. So I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yep.
Well, listen, we're getting down to the last few minutes of our show, and about this time, I always ask my authors to give an aspiring author some advice you wish somebody had given you. Now's your time to pay it forward.
Okay. I'm going to give advice. I guess the advice would apply to me, the 14 and 3/4-year-old me. But I tell this to a lot of people I meet. I was at Thriller Fest earlier in the month, and I told this to people, because there's aspiring as well as published people there. In my experience, in this, and it has been a long journey to get to, publish books. In my experience, notwithstanding what everybody might say about talent, craft, even voice, the people who get there are, as trite as this is going to say, the ones that don't give up. Mm-hmm. And I have been to conferences where, a guy, this was a query conference. This is one of the examples I always give, but, and he was a 50-year-old Russian gentleman who clearly had all kinds of great knowledge and experience. And his query letter got skewered because it wasn't in the format of the, the quatrain that they liked them written in. And in the afternoon, you then get to pitch your 2 pages, and he didn't come. He got so, blown away. And all of us wanted to hear his 2 pages because we were certain that they were going to be amazing, even though the query wasn't good. I'm certain that I am here because of all the people that they wrote a first draft, and that was enough. They then sent it to 50 agents, right? They didn't learn how to write a query. Someone asked them for edits, and they didn't do it and follow up on the opportunity. The list goes on and on. I am here because of all those people who fell away. And I'm not sad about this, because I tell the story and it makes me smile, because I think, I was 14 3/4 years old, and I don't blame that kid for anything, and I learned a lot in the journalism career. But, if I had not thought that thought then, I probably would have been a published writer when I was 30 rather than 56. I'm not sad about it, but it just further illustrates, don't give up. It's the people who get published. I am certain. There are. You do hear about the people who hit the lottery ticket with the first book, and then you hear that James Patterson didn't really hit until his 9th book, right. And the Reacher series, the Jack Reacher series, I think it was book 12, and and on and on and on and on. It's not giving up. It sounds like something off a Hallmark greeting card, but it's what it is.
I call it stickability. You got to have stickability in this industry. This is a long game. This is not I'm going to get in there and I'm going to make, multi-million dollars and get a 6-book contract on my first go-round. chances of that happening are very, very slim. But if
Yep.
you stay with it long enough, your time is coming. That's what the law of averages say, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
Yep.
sticking with. If you'll stay in there, your chance is there. You just have to wait for it.
I agree. And whatever you don't have, like say they're telling you don't have a voice, or your manuscript doesn't have a strong enough voice, is the right way to say it, or your dialogue, is too stodgy, cardboard or whatever. The thing is, that's all craft. If you stick with it and rewrite it again, I mean, I have a rejected novel, and that one that I wrote back when I was 31 and got an agent for, I almost gave up then. And I went into workshops and I had 5 false starts because I thought I was going to be a literary novelist, which was a dumb idea. But, I mean, I almost did, but I didn't. And all that work, in the end, it adds up. And it takes care of whatever is the thing that you're hearing right now that's, stopping you. Well, keep on working. We'll get you there.
I agree so much, Rich. Great words. Great words. Well, listen, tell us where we can find you online. I know my followers and my fans like to go out and check out your books and your site. So tell us where we can find you.
Sure, and because I have this lovely Slovak last name, which actually means gardener in Slovak. My uncle changed it. People ask, because Z means I'm way at the end of the bookshelf too in a bookstore, and I thought about it, but I had the byline for so long in journalism. I wanted to see my name, not some other name that was supposed to be my name. But anyway, if you go to www.richzahradnik, and Zahradnik is spelled Z as in zebra, AHRADNIK. That's Z as in zebra, AHRADNIK.com. That's my website. On Facebook, my novelist page is Rich Zahradnik, all smushed together one word, Rich Zahradnik. And on Twitter, R Zahradnik, all spelled the same way each time. And I'm happy to have followers and communicators and talk with people and whatever else comes along.
Excellent. Listen, you guys, this is going to close up episode 63, but I need for you to go out, like, fan, follow, and subscribe. We want to grow Writer Groupie, you guys. We want more wonderful guests like Rich to come on the show to talk about their books so that you can learn from their experience if you're an aspiring author, and so that you can find new books if you're a reader. Please, whatever you do, go out and like, fan, follow, and subscribe all of the Writer Groupie sites. But feel free to follow, fan, like, and subscribe my personal sites. I have plenty of those as well. You can find us on writergroupie.net. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat and I sound horrible, and I do apologize for that. But we want to be able to grow this show. So y'all go out and y'all do your thing, and be sure and look up Rich Zahradnik and his series, the Coleridge Taylor Mysteries, and everything else that's coming down the pike. I'm real pleased for you, Rich, and thank you again so much for coming on the show.
I thank you for all the time. This has been great. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Writer Groupie. For booking information, show notes, and more, visit writergroupie.net.